can't see my hands, but it's finally time to start talking about books. So welcome back if you've come back, and welcome if you haven't been here before. Thanks for coming and watching. Books. I like books so much, and I started to get into leisure reading again a couple of years ago, kind of right after I got out of, or towards my end of my senior year in college. I started to get into leisure reading again. For a long period, I was reading just texts that I had to read during school, and also just I would start books and pick up and put them away. I remember I told this story. I had when Malala Yousafzai's book came out several years ago. I remember I bought it right away, and I can't tell you how many times I read the first 2 chapters of that book. I had it in my Kindle or my iBooks rather, and I would every time I picked the book up, I would just read the 2 chapters over and over again, because I would start it and then stop reading it and put it away and move on. But on the flip side, I had other times where I would read a whole book in a night. I remember I was going to go see The Fault in Our Stars with some friends of mine. At the time, we had just graduated high school, and I said I wanted to read the book before I saw the movie. So I bought the book on Apple Books, and I literally read the whole book in one night before I saw the movie the next day. I remember my mom came in and I was crying on the floor. So I kind of had a back and forth thing with books. Either I'm reading it and I put them away and I moved on, or I go dive all into it. But and towards the end of college, I said, okay, let me get on the leisure reading. And there's so many books I want to read, so many things I haven't gotten a chance to that have been on my list for a while, books I've owned that I haven't really been able to fully crack into. And I've been doing that for the past several years now, and it's been really fun, really fulfilling, and it's one of my favorite things to do is read. And I'm happy to be discussing my books with you guys now. So every year, I've started now to for the past 3-4 years, I set my reading goal to just be my age. I pretty much always pass that, but I feel it's kind of a good low pressure way to just make sure I'm reading. I usually go over. For example, last year my goal was 27 books. I always do whatever age I'm turning that year is the amount of books I want to read. Last year my goal was 27. I ended up reading 52. So I kind of just change. It just depends on what's happening. But I also have other years where my goal was 25, but I only read 28. So it depends where I am at the time. So yeah, books are, like I said, I read a lot. So I feel it could be fun to kind of go over some of my books that I have ideas on. I think I'm going to every month I'll just come and kind of give a quick synopsis I'm going to do in a minute here of all the books that I've read that month. Talk about them. If I have a standout book, I haven't had one yet, I wouldn't say that I'd make a whole video on. Then I will make a whole video on it essentially and talk through it, give my thoughts, synopses, all types of things, and just have a good chat about it. But yeah, let's get into the first book of the year that I read. So the first book I read in 2024 was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. It came out in 2022. It won the Pulitzer in 2023. It was the co-winner for fiction. It was the book that was recommended to me by one of my old classmates from middle and high school, so I was really happy to read it. And it is a modern reimagining of Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. So the book is set in the Appalachian Mountains of the United States, and it tells the story of this boy named Demon. He's our first person narrator, and he's this young boy who's kind of going through hardship. He's born into a life of poverty. His mother is opioid addicted. His stepfather is abusive, and he's just really struggling in life and going through just a hard life. We eventually see him kind of get into the foster care system. He eventually has to get into child labor, and also he's dealing with the school system that just continues to fail him at every turn, and it's really kind of tough for him. And he's very witty, but he's also very determined to persevere through this life that just feels that it's stacked against him. He's trying to keep getting through it, and that really is the main pull of the book for me, at least. Following his journey, we're going through his victories and his struggles as he's, like I said, trying to navigate this tough life. But you really want to see him do well, and you quickly kind of latch on to him and just want the best for him in every way. The novel explores themes of class disparity. The novel explores themes and social issues like inequality, addiction, foster care, the complex natures of families, and the depth of those topics really make it resonate with you, and it can be relatable for some people, and also just overall it's just a very thought-provoking book that really kind of pulls on you and has you think a lot. After you're done with it, you're really sitting with it for a while. and I thought it was really, really great. For me, I gave that rating a 4 out of 5. I would definitely recommend you read that book. The second book I read was a book called Leave the World Behind, and it is by Ruman Alam. It's another novel. I read it after I watched the movie on Netflix, the movie that I'll talk about in a second. They're pretty similar, I'd say. But the book, like I said, came out in 2020. It's about a family is vacationing in upstate New York. They kind of like do like an Airbnb situation, and there's a major kind of disaster in the world, and suddenly these people knock on their door and say, "Hey, this is our home. You know, we didn't want to stay in the city, so we figured we'd just come back up to our home that you're renting for this weekend." And it's kind of like the tensions of that. It's like first distrusting, like, are these actual people? There's also a thing, the people who rented the home are white. The people who actually own the home are black. So there's kind of that first kind of tension of like, is this actually your home? This is a really nice home, and that kind of whole thing happening. But they come there because there's like a complete blackout in the city, and we eventually learn that it's actually wider than just the city. And they kind of want to go to somewhere that's safer they feel than being, you know, in a high-rise apartment where you gotta walk the steps all the time, that kind of thing. So in that, the book kind of explores, like, you know, the power dynamics of that whole situation, like disparities in class, the fragility of like civilization as a whole, like someone can push a button, and maybe like if we're in a big crisis like that, all those kind of things are happening. It's very, very interesting. In terms of the movie is pretty much stick with the plot pretty much the entire way, I'd say. Like I said, I read the book afterward because I was just interested in it still, because I thought the movie was pretty good, and kind of sticks with the same character development. But in the movie, it kind of really heightens up kind of like the kind of psychological thriller aspect, so you're really kind of on your edge of your seat at some moments. It kind of makes it a little bit more suspenseful, and everything a little bit more like kind of just really suspenseful and those kind of things. But like I said, those core themes in there, like class disparity, power dynamics, fragility of life, is all like still in there, and all kind of coded through. The movie's on Netflix. It has Julia Roberts is the wife of the family who basically rents the home, and Ethan Hawke is her husband, and they have their kids there. Mahershala Ali is the man who owns the home, and his daughter, Michael Smith, is his daughter, and the other stranger basically to the situation. So it's a really good cast. The Obamas produced it with their production company. Really, really good movie. The one thing, it's not really a major thing. In the book, the couple who owns the home, the black couple who owns the home, are older, and then in the film, it's Mahershala Ali, who's I think is in his 40s, and then his daughter, obviously, who's probably like in her 20s. That's the one kind of difference there, and it wasn't a couple; it was a father and daughter situation, and it kind of helped because there's something else that kind of happens in the movie, at least, that kind of leads to the stress of the situation. That was book number 2. I gave that rating a 3 out of 5. I think I probably gave it about the same for the movie. The movie kind of ends in like kind of just like that, like what I was just doing. That kind of how it ends, and it's similar. And like I said, the book is basically the same, and the whole thing is enjoyable enough. But maybe watch the movie, read the book, whatever you want to do. That was book number 2. Book number 3 was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. It came out in 2014. It won the Pulitzer actually in 2015 for fiction, and it's just been critically acclaimed so many places, so I was really happy to pick up and read this book. It follows, it's set in World War II in occupied France, and it follows Marie Laure, who's a blind French girl, and Werner, a German soldier, as their paths kind of intertwine one way or another, again in occupied France during World War II. So Marie Laure kind of flees Paris with her father, and she has this valuable jewel that he gives her, and she eventually finds refuge in Saint Malo, with her eccentric, kind of fun uncle. He also has a maid there. They're kind of like eccentric and fun. Werner is really drawn to radio technology, and through that, the Nazis make him basically go to like a boys' academy to like learn up to be a Nazi essentially, and they start having him basically use his radio aid that he has to track down resistance people and resistance fighters to kind of help the Nazis continue what they're doing. Werner's not really trying to do that, but just because of his talents, they kind of, you're forced to at that time. So their lives kind of collide throughout the story, and in like unexpected ways, and it kind of just shows you like the resilience of humans, even in midst like war and chaos and all these kind of things, and how dark everything is. But the two eventually, like I said, they intertwine one way or another, and it really kind of just brings the whole thing together. Really great book, really great novel. Like I said, it won the Pulitzer Prize a couple years ago. Excellent. It just got turned into a miniseries last year. It's on Netflix. It has Hugh Laurie is in it, Mark Ruffalo, and then the girl playing the French girl is her name is Aria Mia Loberti. Haven't watched the miniseries yet. I'm not sure if I will, but yeah. For me, I gave the book a rating of 4 out of 5. I think it was, like I said, it was really kind of compelling. You're kind of going back and forth between Marie and Warner, excuse me. But like I said, the story's really good. Really kind of nice to see them make it through their times in different ways. And yeah, that was book number 3. Fourth book I read in January, it was called Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It came out in 2023. It's a satirical novel that explores identity, like cultural appropriation, and like the whole publishing industry. So the story centers around June Hayward, who's a writer who's struggling, and she has this manuscript that she has stolen from her deceased Asian American author friend who she met in college. Her friend, who's has been super successful, essentially in the publishing space, and she basically steals this manuscript of hers that was never published. And we basically are following her as she changes her name to Juniper Song. It's a story. It's a Chinese story, but she steals it and basically says, "Oh, well, I could do it too," and changes her name to Juniper Song to kind of help hide her identity that she's a white woman and things like that. And then we're just seeing her basically just steal it and kind of protect, like, no, I don't want anyone to basically have my story essentially, or anyone to know that I stole my friend's story. In this crazy kind of turn of events. So June's novel eventually gains popularity, and she kind of has to, like I said, navigate like the world of the literary space, and with fame, while also trying to like be guilty in some aspect, but also not. Like, you're seeing her like in her mind push-pull, like, okay, well, I stole it, but I did a lot of work on it, and I stole it, but like, you know, I did my research and everything like that, and people were slowly starting to realize that she's actually not Chinese. Like, some people said, "Oh, well, Song, we just assume maybe you're Chinese, or maybe not Chinese, Korean." She's like, "Oh, well, actually, no, I'm white," but, you know, and kind of, again, like, just really just hiding everything that's happening because she's trying to just like coast through, like, "Oh, please don't, you know, find out or get mad at me that I stole someone's story, essentially, or why can't I write about this stuff even though I'm not a Chinese person? Why can't I write about what's happening here?" So really interesting in that way. So the novel kind of like delves into the complex issues surrounding like racial representation in literature, like who should be writing what, and kind of like challenges you to kind of like think in your mind, like, is it okay if someone who's not this certain race writes a story about a certain group of people? Like, if they do the research, is it like okay for them to do it? It's kind of like that thing. So you kind of like are challenging your own biases in your head as you're reading. So it's very thought-provoking, very suspenseful as you're seeing her go through. It's like, is she going to get found out? Is she not going to get found out? And you really don't know like what's going to happen until you're really at the end of the book, essentially. For me, it was on the way to being one of my favorite books I've read this year, and I still don't really know out of the 5 I've read in January, at least, if I've had a favorite of those 5. But it was on the way to being like a clear favorite for me, but then kind of the final third of it kind of changed, not like change, but the final third of it kind of had it fall off for me. I feel like it was really strong in the first 2/3, and then eventually it kind of was just like, all right, you know. So my rating for it total was 4 out of 5. I probably would have, on Goodreads, you can't do like half stars or anything like that. I mean, I could write it in. I just put 4 out of 5. I probably would maybe strongly probably put like 3.75, but I just ended up writing up to 4 for the sake of the Goodreads ranking system. So that was book number 4, Yellowface. A really great book, like I said, really thought-provoking, really has you thinking about all types of things and challenging yourself and your thoughts, and overall, I definitely recommend it. And the final book for January 2024 was 8 Woos of Love by Jay Shetty. 8 Woos of Love, How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go. It came out in 2023. Jay Shetty is someone I've obviously kind of heard about and seen in some capacity. I know he has like a podcast. I've never watched his podcast, but I've heard a little bit about his story. He used to be a monk for several years, and now is kind of like a life coach in some aspects, and continues to kind of just talk about maybe his experiences doing being a monk, and also just like things he's learned in his life. And like I said, he's a life coach. He lives in LA, so I know he has like a lot of celebrity clients and all that kind of thing. Never really listened to his podcast or heard of him much. But I picked up this book because I was seeing some people were reading it. I kept seeing like people, I didn't necessarily see anything like positive or negative reviews on it. I just saw people picking it up and saying, why not, reading it, and like, why not? So I figured, okay, I mean, why not just read it? And I feel like the few things I've seen of him, he seems like a pretty alright person, and it's just interested to see what he has to say. I never would know with like self-help books. I haven't read too many like self-help, or kind of like, I'm not sure if this would necessarily be categorized as self-help, but I guess it would be. But I haven't really read a lot of those, but I just figured, why not do this one? So he offers a guide to kind of like navigate the various stages of romantic relationships. And he starts to draw on like ancient like wisdom that he's gained, obviously some of it from, I feel like, from his monkdom, if that's how you categorize it or how you say it, and like kind of like modern science of today and things like that. So he outlines like 8 key principles that he believes will help you find and maintain and nurture a good relationship, all those kind of things. The rules, I'll just list those. I wrote them down here. So like I said, there are 8 of them. Rule 1 is let yourself be alone. Rule 2, don't ignore your karma. Rule 3, define love before you think it, feel it, or say it. Rule 4, your partner is your guru. Rule 5, purpose comes first. Rule 6, win or lose together. Rule 7, you don't break in a breakup. It was a good chapter. Rule 8, love again and again. So he gives these great things, great rules for you, and breaks down so many different things. Throughout the book, there's things that he says, oh, let's do this prompt. And one of the things, it was like, hey, spend some time with yourself. Write down how much time you spent like alone in this period, and like write what you did, things like that, and kind of like things that you can work through and do. I didn't do all of those because I was kind of like, I had a set amount of time I was going to read the book. I had it on from the library, so I wasn't going to I couldn't take forever on it. But those kind of things are in there that kind of help you work through as you're reading. So those kind of things, again, really kind of give you good thoughts to maintain and nurture a relationship. I was even thinking about it in some capacity when I was reading. Like, I feel like even if you're not in a romantic relationship, you can still benefit from a lot of things, and just like in general interpersonal relationships, like looking out for your partner and other aspects. If it's like a family member, if it's a good friendship, those kind of things that you maybe have a close relationship with, kind of like helping nurture those things. I feel like we're really good. Helps you kind of get the self-awareness and like have your personal growth before you go into something like that, because those kind of things are going to help you actually have a long-lasting relationship, have like healthy relationships. All those kind of things are really important. So I honestly found it pretty refreshing and pretty nice to hear. I feel like he had a lot of good things in there. Ultimately, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I feel like I said, I feel like it was pretty good. I would recommend it to people. And I'm not sure if I will go and listen to more of his things, or if a podcast or anything like that. But I feel like what I got from the book was pretty good. I highlighted a lot of it as well. So good little tidbits. There was even a part in there, he was like breaking down like what kind of questions to ask on dates, and it was like date 1 is these kind of questions, date 2 is, and I was like highlighting those because I feel like those were good like little tips to have in terms of like what each date is. And also he was saying like date 2 is not necessarily date 2. You might have date 1 4 times, and then you don't eventually get to date 2 until it's like your 5th date maybe. And those kind of things, like exploring like what are we doing in these certain situations. Just a lot of good things from him. I feel like I enjoyed that one. So that was book number 5 for the month, last book for the month. So those are my 5 books of January. Thief and Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Leave the World Behind by Ruman Alam, also is a movie I'd recommend you see. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And 8 Rules of Love, How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go by Jay Shetty. I already read another book. I started another book at the very end of the last day of January, and I finished it now. And I have another book that I'm like pages away from finishing, and then I'll start my next one. So I'll have a whole other set to go over in terms of my February reads. But thanks for watching this. I will say, I wanted to say, I always tell people when I started getting into reading again, I started, I could buy books, and I have bought several books, but I have other books that maybe I don't really want to read. I don't really want to own, but I want to read. I would really recommend you join your local library. I have a library kind of near me, so it's really nice and convenient for me. And also where I live, I have access to so many different library systems, so it's really nice. But what I started to use was this app called Libby. At the time it was called Overdrive, but now it's called Libby. It's a app where you can connect your library card to get free ebooks and audiobooks. I kind of go in between. I like to have physical books, but sometimes I really just don't mind being able to have it on it's all connected to Kindle usually, and that's fine with me because that way I can have everything already connected to all my devices. I could pull it up whenever. I don't have to always have the book with me if I'm quickly going somewhere and I have a couple minutes to get some reading in. It's really great. Like I said, all you need is your library card, and then you have access to this massive library. So I would really recommend joining your library, getting on Libby. Even Hoopla is one my library is using as well now too. There's so many different resources out there if you want to get reading. I feel like just start jumping in and doing it. It's really fun. It's cool to do. I will link my Goodreads below. You could, if you want to see my books as we're going along, you could follow there. But I will come back every month and kind of do a quick synopsis of the books. And if I have a standout one, I probably will come and talk about that for a whole video. But yeah, those were my books for January 2024. We'll talk about books again here soon. And thanks for watching again. Bye.